Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz today ordered strikes against Hezbollah terrorists operating in Beirut's Dahya neighborhood. The decision comes after Netanyahu convened a high-level security consultation overnight as Israel's campaign against Hezbollah continues to expand in Lebanon. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the latest.
יחד עם שר הביטחון, הנחיתי את צה"ל לתקוף מטרות טרור בביירות. לא יהיה מצב שחיזבאללה תוקף את ערינו ואת אזרחינו, ומפקדות הטרור שלו בביירות, בדחיה, יישארו מחוץ לתחום. אנחנו ממשיכים להעמיק את הפעילות שלנו בשטח בדרום לבנון, לחסלים מעוזי חיזבאללה במנוסה. אנחנו נחושים להחזיר את הביטחון לתושבי הצפון, בדיוק כפי שעשינו לתושבי הדרום.
Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Katz say the decision to expand airstrikes to the Lebanese capital follow Hezbollah's repeated violations of the ceasefire and the attacks against our cities and citizens. Israeli officials say the cabinet discussions focused on possible next steps in the war, including expanded strikes against Hezbollah targets in Beirut with U.S. approval. Jerusalem is seeking to shift from a strategy focused on holding territory in southern Lebanon to a broader air campaign targeting Hezbollah's command centers, weapons depots, and leadership infrastructure. Netanyahu is reported to have convinced U.S. officials that Hezbollah cannot continue attacking Israel while enjoying safe havens in the Lebanese capital. At the same time, the IDF is deepening its ground offensive in southern Lebanon. The military says it's been striking Hezbollah weapons storage facilities, manned headquarters, and other terror infrastructure in the Tyre area and across southern Lebanon. These operations come as Israeli forces consolidate their hold on the strategic Beaufort Ridge, one of Hezbollah's most important strongholds north of the border. Amid the fighting, an IDF soldier was killed and 3 others wounded in a Hezbollah drone attack in southern Lebanon overnight. The IDF identified the fallen soldier as Staff Sergeant Adam Tsarfati, 20, from the Commando Brigade's Madlan unit from Rosh Ayin. According to the Army, an explosive-laden first-person view drone launched by Hezbollah struck a site in the southern Lebanese town of Yomor, near the Beaufort Castle, where IDF troops were operating. The blast killed Tsarfati and wounded another soldier seriously. As Israel expands its offensive both on the ground and in the air, the battle for southern Lebanon is entering a new and more dangerous phase. The conflict is rapidly evolving from a border campaign to a broader confrontation.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun have held separate talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio as Washington pushes a new diplomatic effort to contain the escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. According to a U.S. official, the American proposal would require Hezbollah to immediately halt all attacks on Israel. In return, Israel would agree not to expand its military campaign into Beirut. The initiative comes while Israel is reportedly seeking U.S. approval for possible future strikes against Hezbollah targets in the Lebanese capital. The U.S. official said President Aoun attempted to advance the proposal, but Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri insisted that Israel must first halt its military operations. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council is set to hold an emergency session in New York later tonight to discuss Israel's expanded offensive in Lebanon following the seizure of the Beaufort Castle. The meeting was requested by France. French President Emmanuel Macron said that nothing justifies the major escalation underway in South Lebanon, while Israeli officials say Hezbollah cannot continue attacking Israel while operating from what they describe as safe havens in Beirut, as this conflict enters a more uncertain and potentially broader phase. Communities on Israel's north have been under heavy fire from incoming Hezbollah rockets over the weekend. Schools and towns along the border with Lebanon were shut starting Sunday as the IDF Home Front Command tightens restrictions to protect the residents. ILTV's Devo Klein filed this report from Tel Aviv.
Hi, Sivan. I'm standing here in the heart of Tel Aviv. This building that you see just behind me with this huge sphere on the top, that's, of course, the iconic IDF headquarters. Now, these orders that you mentioned before coming from IDF officials to instruct the IDF to strike the Dahya neighborhood in Beirut, that's coming from the IDF Chief of Staff and the Minister of Defense from this building right behind me. Now, what else they're discussing in this iconic building? The ongoing threat from Hezbollah, not only on IDF troops stationed on the border, but also on Israeli civilians in the north. Those are, of course, the explosive-laden drones that are being sent over by the Islamic regime-backed terror group in Lebanon over to Israel. Now, in the recent barrage that we saw last night, back-to-back sirens in the north of Israel, in the upper Galilee, as multiple drones and rockets have made their way from southern Lebanon over to Israel. Now, in these reports, we've seen that 4 people have been lightly injured in a community in Bet Hillel, that's a little bit east of Kiryat Shmona, which is the northernmost, the largest city in the north of Israel. But we haven't heard of any more reports of damages or injuries from last night's barrage. Now, starting this morning at 6:10 a.m., back-to-back red alert sirens across multiple communities in the north, targeting Israeli civilians, not just troops, but civilians. Now, thankfully, by God's good graces, we have not heard of any injuries or damages in the barrages and the rockets that have been sent over this morning, but we will continue to follow these developments extremely closely. As you mentioned, the fallen soldier, as of recently in the clashes, has unfortunately been killed by one of these explosive-laden drones, these FPV drones that Hezbollah are launching toward Israel. So a very real threat that is already claiming the lives of Israeli soldiers and forcing many citizens of northern Israel to evacuate their homes. Many have already left their border communities as they sit on the confrontation line, but many are choosing to stay. Those who are choosing to stay are experiencing back-to-back sirens and red alerts, being sent into shelters every single hour. That's the report here from Tel Aviv.
And thank you to Devo for that. And joining me now to discuss the latest on Lebanon is David Daoud, Senior Fellow at FDD. Thank you for joining. Now, Israel ordered...
Thank you for having me on.
Israel ordered strikes in Beirut, Hezbollah's main stronghold. Is this move the right move, in your opinion? Certainly residents of Israel expect this after being attacked daily, but we obviously already hear the critics.
Well, I think it's not just a matter of strikes in Beirut. It's a matter of, we know that an organization like Hezbollah can't be defeated from the air. I mean, the best example you need is the situation with Hamas in Gaza, where Israel's encircling a much smaller enclave, fighting a far less powerful and far less entrenched terrorist organization. And after 2 years, Hamas still holds large swaths of Gaza. So what you need is not just these concentrated airstrikes in Beirut, but you need the kind of concerted push into the areas of South Lebanon where Hezbollah operates, where Hezbollah might have production facilities. Obviously, the IDF doesn't have the capability to pursue Hezbollah's entire military infrastructure in Lebanon. That would require an occupation of most of Lebanon, which is beyond the IDF's capabilities. But combining airstrikes with ground maneuvers, kind of like what we're starting to see in the south, that's the winning combination, not just airstrikes in Beirut.
Now, we see that France is the one involved with the UN Security Council meeting later today, and we've seen them involved quite a lot where it comes to Lebanon. What can you tell us about this French connection and involvement where it comes to Lebanon?
In some ways, the French-Lebanese connection parallels and is even deeper in some ways, more entrenched than the U.S.-Israel relationship, in the sense that France ushered Lebanon into independence. Right, they were the ones controlling the mandate, and they view themselves as having a special responsibility towards Lebanon. And in fact, if you talk to a lot of French diplomats, to a vision of Lebanon that no longer exists today, and what they're trying to do is maintain, this is the French policy for decades, to maintain stability in Lebanon almost at all costs. The problem is that by trying not to rock the boat, what you do is you create the stability from which Hezbollah benefits, right? It's not real stability. It's an illusory stability that is temporary, that allows an organization that is ultimately destabilizing Lebanon, one of the many factors that are destabilizing Lebanon, but this is a critical one, to continue growing, to continue operating as it has always done, and to continue dragging Lebanon into further holes. I mean, you look at Lebanon today, the last round of the war, right, between October 8th and November 2023 and November 27th, 2024, the estimates of damage are somewhere in like 11 or 12 billion. And now you have the second round of fighting that is ongoing. And this is all because of Hezbollah. And this is coming down on a country that has been in economic crisis since 2019. So I really wonder what kind of stability France thinks it's promoting when it deals with Hezbollah as if it's any other Lebanese actor.
Now, how could Emmanuel Macron, the French president, possibly say that nothing justifies this major escalation in Lebanon. The Israeli north has been attacked nonstop ever since February 28th in this round. Even though there was a ceasefire, even though they were instructed not to, they had continued this entire time, daily strikes. How could he say that it doesn't merit an escalation?
That's just empty political talk. If you ask me, it's empty diplomatic talk. What justifies this escalation is precisely what you said. It's the international law that someone like President Emmanuel Macron thinks that he's relying upon, because Israel has offered off-ramps both between October 3rd of 2023 and September 17th of 2024, not even for the disarmament of Hezbollah at that point. Just back off the border, just stop attacking, just decouple Lebanon from Gaza. Don't even disarm, just leave us alone. That was the Israeli position, and Hezbollah didn't. So the Israelis tried to resolve matters through the diplomatic course. Hezbollah insisted it would not. And after that, the November 27, 2024 ceasefire reiterated Hezbollah's obligation under international law to disarm. This is not something that Hezbollah has a choice in doing. Hezbollah's every act of armament is not just illegal. I guess now it's illegal under Lebanese law, but it's illegal under international law. So the very act of armament is a violation of international law. You add to that Hezbollah is continuing the war. This isn't the new war that they started on March 2nd. It's continuing the war that it started on October 8th of 2023. So the threshold for Israeli operations is much lower than it was to start the war to begin with. And Hezbollah is still insisting they will not disarm. The Lebanese government is once again making it very clear that they are unwilling and unable to deal with Hezbollah because they want to avoid having a civil war in their country. To some degree, I can understand that, but I can also understand that Israel does not. That's not Israel's problem. Israel does not want to live under the threat of Hezbollah, and what justifies it, again, this combination of Hezbollah violating international law by rearming, attacking Israel again in service of a foreign cause, Iranian to protect the Iranian regime, and the Lebanese government's continued unwillingness and inability to deal with Hezbollah. This justifies a proportionate Israeli military response, which is precisely what we're seeing in Lebanon right now.
Okay, well, speaking of military response, do you believe that Israel's hands, are they tied until Donald Trump unties them? Can Israel act independently?
To some degree. I mean, look, obviously the U.S.-Israel relationship is a long-standing one, and we're close partners. But the United States happens to be we're the senior partner in this relationship, and to some degree, it's not just President Donald Trump. Any U.S. administration places limits on Israeli freedom of action. I think this administration has been very understanding of Israel's needs. The problem, if you ask me, is that they're willing to give these negotiations with Lebanon a chance. Despite Lebanon, I mean, you look at the the meeting between the IDF and the LAF delegation that happened at the Pentagon on the 29th. The LAF delegation wouldn't even address the IDF delegation face to face, and they came insisting on the same principles, the same end goals, the same sequencing as Lebanon did in 2006. Right, this idea of ceasefire, Israeli withdrawal. Then we'll talk about potential enforcement of disarmament, but that'll be an internal Lebanese conversation. Nothing in Lebanon's position has changed, and yet, and that obviously led to Hezbollah's growth for 18 years rather than to its dismantlement. But the U.S. administration wants to keep giving this peace track, the security and the political track now, a chance, and therefore it's asking Israel to scale down its operations in Lebanon in order to give Lebanon what Beirut is saying is necessary breathing room. But necessary breathing room for what? If you look a little bit beyond the surface, a little bit beyond the rhetoric, a little bit beyond the sensationalist photo ops, Lebanon today remains, with some cosmetic changes, the same Lebanon of 2006 as it relates to dealing with Hezbollah.
David Daoud, thank you very much for your valuable input on this.
Thank you for having me on.
In Israel, everything can change in an instant. That's why Hadassah hospitals don't wait for a crisis to prepare. In times of trouble, our hospitals react quickly, rushing units underground, maternity wards, cancer units, ICUs, ensuring our life-changing care continues. Soldiers are saved, civilians healed. But more underground facilities are urgently needed. Advanced operating rooms, fortified recovery spaces, and additional beds. The people of Israel always need to be ready for whatever comes next. Please visit Hadassah.org and give today, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Hadassah. Life-changing.
The United States and Iran have exchanged military blows once again. Iran's chief negotiator says that the ongoing naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz and recent escalation in Lebanon are clear indications of U.S. noncompliance with the ceasefire. That's as President Trump says Iran wants to make a deal and urges everyone to relax. With missiles, drones, and airstrikes reported on both sides, negotiators are struggling to salvage a deal to bring the conflict to an end. In the latest escalation, the U.S. military says it carried out a series of strikes against Iranian military targets over the weekend after an American drone was shot down over international waters. U.S. Central Command said the attacks targeted Iranian radar sites, drone command centers, air defense systems, and launch facilities on Gorik and Keshem Islands. The Pentagon said the operation was conducted in self-defense after Iran downed a U.S. MQ-1 drone and threatened shipping lanes in the region. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps responded by claiming it targeted an airbase used in the U.S. operation. The announcement came as Kuwait reported intercepting missile and drone attacks with air raid sirens sounding across the country. At the same time, diplomatic efforts appear to be losing momentum. Iranian media reports say Tehran is revising a draft agreement after President Donald Trump demanded tougher terms, including stronger limits on Iran's nuclear program and its stockpile of enriched uranium. Iran's chief negotiator insists Tehran will not accept any deal that fails to protect what it calls Iranian rights, highlighting the deep divisions that continue to stand in the way of a lasting agreement.
سربازان میدان مبارزه دیپلماسی هیچ اعتمادی به حرفها و وعده‌های دشمن ندارند. آنچه برای ما ملاک است دستاوردهای عینی است که باید کسب کنید تا در مقابل آن دست به انجام تعهدات خود بزنیم و تا اطمینان پیدا نکنیم که حقوق ملت ایران را گرفته ایم هیچ توافقی را تأیید نخواهیم کرد. تضمین این راهبرد جان ماست که کف دست گرفته ایم تا نثار مردم ایران کنیم.
In his most recent post on the war on Truth Social, President Trump said, Iran really wants to make a deal and it will be a good one for the USA. He then goes on to blame what he calls Democrats and unpatriotic Republicans for his failure to decide on a deal or a return to war. He finishes saying, just sit back and relax. It will all work out well in the end. It always does. Two teenage girls were wounded, one of them seriously, in a terror car ramming attack Sunday evening at the Gush Etzion junction in Judea and Samaria. According to the IDF, a Palestinian terrorist drove a vehicle into pedestrians at a bus stop near the junction before being shot dead by a soldier from the Kfir Brigade's Nachshon battalion. Israeli medical officials said a 17-year-old girl suffered serious injuries and was taken to surgery at Sharet Tzedek Medical Center in Jerusalem. A 15-year-old girl was moderately wounded. Reports say the attacker was a Palestinian from the Hebron area. Following the incident, Israeli forces imposed road closures around the junction while security services continued their investigation. The attack took place at one of the most sensitive intersections in Judea and Samaria. The Gush Etzion junction, located south of Jerusalem, has been the scene of multiple previous terror attacks in recent years, including a deadly combined ramming and stabbing attack in November 2025.
The State of Israel announces the year of Od Yoter Tov, 0% income tax for New Olim. You read that right. 0% income tax for New Olim for those who make Aliyah in 2026. And this is in addition to the existing benefits for New Olim in employment and beyond. It's simply Od Yoter Tov. 100% Zionism, 0% income tax. Now is the time to make Aliyah. For more details, visit the Ofik Israeli website.
Turning to South America, where pro-Israel presidential candidate in Colombia is leading his anti-Israel opponent after the first round of voting with a runoff set for later in the month. Preliminary and near-final results show right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella finishing first with about 44% of the vote, ahead of left-wing candidate Ivan Cepeda at roughly 41%. No candidate won an outright majority, sending the race to a runoff on June 21st. Last month, de la Espriella promised to renew a strategic alliance with the State of Israel and defend the Judeo-Christian principles that form the foundation of Western civilization. In a post on X hailing the Jewish community, de la Espriella added, "In my government, Colombia will take a clear step in its foreign policy. We will establish our embassy in Jerusalem and strengthen a direct, firm, and strategic relationship with Israel." Cepeda has promised to stick to outgoing President Petro's stance on Israel, Petro's severe ties in 2024 over the war in Gaza. And 50,000 people marched the streets of New York on Sunday to show support and solidarity with Israel and the city's Jewish community for the annual Israel Day March. Missing, though, was New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who decided to boycott the event. It was the first time in 60 years that a city mayor skipped the celebration. ILTV Libby Alon reports from New York.
New York hosted the biggest pro-Israel support parade ever. People came from all over the world to show their support for Israel.
Today we march in defiance and also to stand up for the values that define New York State since its very beginning. We'll always be that bastion, that beacon of hope for others to be able to live the way they want to live and practice their religious belief freely from harassment. When you go to worship with your families, you should not have to endure harassment, intimidation, or hatred from anyone.
Usually for the past 62 years, the parade has been led by the mayor of New York. It is held every year to show the strong connection between the United States and Israel and the broad support for Israel. But this year was different. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani decided not to attend the parade and made it clear that his views on Israel are very critical. This upset many people in the Jewish community who said that an event like this should not become political.
This parade is very important for us to show our support for Israel and for Zionism here also in the diaspora and in special days in New York.
We feel that the Jews in the diaspora and the Jews in Israel are one nation, have to be there for each other all the time, and especially in these difficult days where we feel the anti-Semitism and the hate, and we have to come together, and this is a wonderful event.
Speaker of the Knesset Amir Ohana led the parade, and this is the first time in history that the Speaker of the Israeli Knesset has come to lead the event. He was joined by a group of 12 members of the Knesset from both the coalition and the opposition, as well as 50 mayors and local leaders from across Israel. Also, former New York City mayors Eric Adams and Michael Bloomberg also took part. It's very important at a time when Israel is facing so many challenges. This event sent one clear message: support for Israel is stronger than ever.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 37 degrees Celsius or 99 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and keep up with us on social media. That's at ILTV_Israel on all platforms. You can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for watching.